الله على آله الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أوصيكم عباد الله ونفسي بتقوى الله. The Shia world these days is commemorating the Shahadat of the Lady of Light, Fatima and Zahra, salawatullah alayha. Although she did not live a long life, but she left a lasting impact on the Muslim history. Not only Muslims, but even on some of the non-Muslims who started to study the history of Islam. It's interesting to see, a pattern among some of the non-Muslims that when they come to Shia Islam, especially to study it, the most impactful event that they go for is the tragedy of Karbala. But to some of them, when they start studying the tragedy of Karbala, then they are drawn to the personality of Fatima and Zahra. And this is a very interesting phenomenon that we from within would not be able to understand how it works. But those who are coming from outside, they start studying Karbala, and that pushes them to go and study the life of Fatima and Zahra. One of the prominent figures during our times is Christopher Clohessy. He is a Catholic priest. Originally, he's based in South Africa, in Cape Town. He is a Catholic priest, but also a senior lecturer at the Pontifical Institute for Arabic and Islamic Studies in Rome. He spends some of the months in the year teaching there. And he started, researching the martyrdom of Imam Husayn alayhi salam. And while doing that, his intent was to write something about Karbala and Imam Husayn. But while doing the research, he was, drawn to the personality of the mother of Husayn, Fatima and Zahra, salawatullah alayha. Coming from a Catholic background, one of the things which drew his attention was, and these are his words, the remarkable similarities between Fatima of Shia Islam and Mary of Catholicism. In Catholic tradition, Mary, Maryam has a very special regard. So Dr. Clohessy ended up temporarily abandoned the project on Karbala and Imam Husayn and started working and researching on Bibi Fatima and Zahra. In 2009, he actually published his book, which is entitled as Fatima, Daughter of Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Just recently, actually just yesterday, I was talking with somebody who came from a Hindu background. And while, we were talking, and he was talking about his own spiritual journey towards Shia Islam, it's interesting to see that he first, got attracted to the ceremonies of Azadar in Muharram in India. That's where he started, the interest in Imam Husayn alayhi salam in Karbala. But that, if I may call it, the final pull towards Islam and Shia Islam for him was this study of the life of Fatima and Zahra, salawatullah alayha. Even among the Arabic-speaking world, those who are from the Sunni and Sufi background, most of them, There is a whole literature these days, which is known as the literature of the Mustabsirin. Mustabsirin means those who have come into the fold of Shia Islam from other sects of Islam. And we're talking mostly about the Arab, individuals. Many of them ended up writing their own, spiritual journey. I think the most famous is Dr. Tijani Samawi, whose book, the first one of his books, ثُمَّ اهْتَدَيْتُ. Then I Was Guided is very popular because the way he talks about his own personal, spiritual journey, how he came to know he was from a Sunni, Sufi background. But there are others also. And by looking at that work, you will see the writings of those mustabsirin, as we call them. Interesting that some of them also point to this phenomenon of Fatima al-Zahra. It was her, suffering, her words and her life, which actually was the final decision-making factor that Shiaism is the truth. One of those, books written by these Arabic-speaking, individuals, the title says, بِنُورِ فَاطِمَةِ اهْتَدَيْتُ, that I was guided by the nur of Fatima al-Zahra, salawatullah alayha. The writer there in the preface, he talks about it, and when he says at the end, he says, this is Abdul Mun'im Hassan, the words of Fatima al-Zahra in her Khutba, where she was presenting the Quranic verses about her right of inheritance. He says those words actually had a very strong impact on him, and that was the tipping, point for him, where, he quotes those words from the Khutbah of Bibi Fatima, where she is saying, "You claim that I have no share in the inheritance from my father. Did Allah send a verse to you that has excluded me from the right of inheritance?" The ayat of Quran talk about the children inheriting from the parents. So do you have any special ayat which just came down which says, oh, Fatima is exempted from this ruling? Then she says, do you claim that my father and I are from different faiths, so I don't inherit him? Because one of the barriers in inheritance is kufr. So if you have a Muslim parent, and the child renounces Islam and says, I'm no more a Muslim, although the relationship is there, but he has no right to inherit. So she is raising this question, do you claim that my father and I are from different faiths, and so I don't inherit him? Aren't my father and I from the same faith? Do you know the Quran and its intricacies more than my father and my husband? And then at the end she says, the best of judges, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and my supporter is Muhammad, and our meeting will be on the day of judgment, where she lives it to the day of Qiyamah. And this is Abdul Mun'im Hassan, he says, these words basically penetrated deep into my heart, and tears overcame me, and this was basically the tipping point for him to accept Shia Islam. And so we see that, it's not about whether her life was very long. It was a very impactful life that even centuries after her passing away, when people study her life and her words, it has an impact on them, and she becomes like Al-Furqan. Al-Furqan means that measure or the standard by which you are able to differentiate and distinguish what is haqq from batil and what is truth from falsehood. And so this is one of the important points that we see. And if I may say, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made her actually a very powerful argument in the wilayat of Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Because she, as long as she was alive, whether it was, 90 days or 6 months, irrespective of the remaining months after the Prophet, she refused to acknowledge the first Khalifa as the Khalifa. And that itself becomes a very serious point. I had a whole lecture about it, I think, a few years ago, talking about this concept of the hadith, which is there from the Ahl Sunnah as well as the Shia sources, where the Prophet says, Man mata wa lam ya'rif imam zamanihi mata mitatan jahiliya. If a person passes away from this dunya and doesn't have an imam, he doesn't have bay'at on him, then his death is the death of kufr, jahiliya. And that question needs to be raised about Fatima al-Zahra, because she did not do bay'at at all. Even from the Sunni point of view, as long as Fatima salawatullah alayha was alive, according to their point of view, Ali did not, come on side with the Khalifa. And that's an issue that Muslims have to answer. What was the state of the death of Fatima al-Zahra? What was her position in light of that hadith of Rasulullah? And that is where she becomes, even in her death, becomes the furqan for those who want to know where is right and where is wrong. إن أحسن الحديث كتاب الله العزيز بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوبة وهو الغفور الرحيم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف للعباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعمة ومعدن الرحمة أوصيك عباد الله بالتوبة عما سلف من ذنوبكم. Let me present to you in this second khutbah a segment from the khutbah and the speech of Bibi Fatima al-Zahra salawatullah alayha. Where she talks about, because she began her speech by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talking about the concept of Tawheed, and then she talks about nubuwwat of her father, and even, the position of Ali, the way he left him as the successor and the guide. And before she comes to the issue of, Fadak, in between there, she talks about some of the rituals and what are the benefits of that. Where she begins by saying, فَجَعَلَ اللَّهُ الْإِيمَانَ تَطْحِيرًا لَكُم مِّنَ الشِّرْكِ. The first, he says that Allah has made the faith, Iman, as a way of purification from polytheism and shirk. Then she says, وَالصَّلَاةَ تَنْزِيهًا لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. The ritual prayers that you do, this is for elimination of arrogance, especially in form of the Jamaat prayers. Our teachers of ethics and morality, they talk about this spiritual disease of kibr and arrogance. And they say one of the powerful way of getting rid of that is to participate in the Jamaat prayers, because there is no reserved spot for anyone. You might end up maybe even sitting behind your own servant. And at the time of sajda, your head is close to the feet of your servant. And that is that teaches us the sense of humility. Then she says, وَالزَّكَاةِ تَزْكِيَةً لِلنَّفْسِ وَنَمَاءً فِي الرِّزْقِ, and giving in charity, whether it's wajib or mustahab, for purification of the soul as well as increase in sustenance. It helps both ways, on a spiritual level, as well as the barakat and the blessing of Allah in our income. وَالصِّيَامِ تَصْبِيطًا لِلْإِخْلَاصِ, and fasting actually establishes this sense of sincerity by the nature of the action itself. You see, everything that we do something. In fasting, you don't do anything. Do you do anything? No. Unless, I come very gloomy faced in that day of Ramadan, you will say Maulana is hungry or something. Otherwise, it doesn't show. And so fasting actually is a way of establishing that ikhlas and sincerity that a person, is not able to show that. Prayers you can show, charity you can show. And so that's where Bibi Fatima al-Zahra says, الصيام تصبيطا للإخلاص والحج تشعيدا للدين. And when it comes to Hajj, this is basically to strengthen the faith, especially when you are going the first time for Hajj. It has an impact on you in a very strong manner. وَالْعَدْلِ تَنْسِيقًا لِلْقُلُوبِ, and the principle of justice in Islam, this is to bring the hearts closer. And then she puts in something about Ahlul Bayt. وَطَاعَتُنَا نِظَامًا لِلْمِلَّةِ, and obedience to us, our obedience, is for organization of the faith. وَإِمَامَتُنَا أَمَانًا لِلْفُرْقَةِ, and our leadership is safety against division. وَالْجِهَادُ عِزًّا لِلْإِسْلَامِ, and jihad is for the power of Islam. وَالصَّبْرُ مَعُونَةً عَلَى إِسْتِيجَابِ الْعَجْرِ, and patience in the challenges that we face in our life is for achieving the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالْعَمْرُ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ مَصْلِحَةً لِلْعَامَّةِ, and the process of bidding good and forbidding evil in our own society, in our own circles, this is for the benefit of the people. وَبِرُّ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وِقَايَةً مِنَ السُّخْطِ, and kindness towards the parents is to protect against the divine wrath. Allah's ghadab is prevented when you are kind to your parents. وَصِلَةُ الْأَرْحَامِ مُنْسَاتٌ فِي الْعُمْرِ وَمَنْمَاتٌ لِلْعَدَدِ, and maintaining the ties with those who are related to you, that will prolong your life and also increase in your sustenance and blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالْقِصَاص حِقْنًا لِلدِّمَاءِ, and she says this law of retaliation that we have in the Quran, this is for protection of life. If that law of retaliation wouldn't be there, people will not fear, violating the rights of others. وَالْوَفَاء بِالنَّظْرِ تَعْرِيضًا لِلْمَغْفِرَةِ, fulfilling the nazar, the vow or the pledge that you have made with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will bring the pardon and maghfirah, forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَتَوْفِيَّةُ الْمَكَائِلِ وَالْمَوَازِينِ تَغْيِيرًا لِلْبَخْسِ, and fulfilling the weight and measures when you are in the business of trade, You know, be truthful in measuring your goods for your customers. That will prevent the loss for the seller as well as the buyer. والنهي عن شرب الخمر تنزيها عن الرجس. Prohibition of drinking intoxicants is for purification against evil. Shaitan uses the intoxicant drinks as a key to misguide people. I use this term that, you know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to help us, He has different ways of doing it. But remember, even Shaitan is there, you know, and when he wants to put us, if I may use that term, on autopilot towards Jahannam, he will make the person addicted to intoxicants. Because after that, he doesn't have to worry about that person. He will go from one evil to another. واجتناب القذف حجابا عن اللعنة, and refraining from slander, especially when it comes to the issue of, you know, morality of people, especially women. Quran talks about it very clearly. Do not accuse somebody of very, you know, evil doing in that way, and preventing yourself from slandering others is a way of protecting against divine curse. وترك السرقة إيجابا للعفة, refraining from theft is for preserving self-respect. وحرم الله الشرك إخلاصا له بالربوبية, and Allah has made shirk and polytheism forbidden for sincerity in accepting Him as the Lord. It's interesting that she starts with Tawheed and then again also ends with the issue of refraining from shirk. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to be among the true followers of Fatima al-Zahra salawatullah alayha. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. وعلى إمام المتقين وعمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه. وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها. وعلى سيد الشباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا الحجة بن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان. ماحي آثار البدء والطغيان وهادي بأبنية الشرك والنفاق حاصل فر البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرج وسهل مخرجا واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المسترشدين بين يديه. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.